I'm Will Allred. I'm one of the co-founders at Lavender. So real-time email writing assistant. We're focused on helping salespeople write better emails faster. And so one of the fun things about my job is we see millions of emails per month. So I get to share those insights through live examples that folks are working on and really just get to dive in and help folks write better emails. And so along that journey, I have gotten the privilege of meeting Christina, who is an advisor at Lavender, helps us with a bunch of outbound. Christina, I'll let you actually introduce yourself though.
Yeah, you already stole the show. You took my intro. No, outside of advising for Lavender, again, I'm Christina Finseth. I lead growth marketing for a company called Interseller, which is a prospecting and outreach platform mainly for recruiting teams. But I'm excited to get into this email that you sent. And then just so if you are new joining us, we tend to start off the show with just going through an email and then our two rewrites. But this is a Q&A session. So once you're ready to ask questions, we'll let you know. You can raise your hand. We'll take you on live so you can ask your question. It could be a question about cold email, tactics, best practices, whatever. It could also be us rewriting an email with you live. So
Totally.
Anything goes.
So Christina, I don't have the privilege of being able to share.
Oh no, hold on. Let me help you. I'm going to make you a co-host and then you should be able to share. Try it now.
I made it. All right, cool.
Wait.
So, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, give us a thumbs up in chat if you can see it.
Awesome. So, gave this one a nice little catchy title of Pardon the Pitch because it starts off with, "Hi Will, pardon the cold outreach. Nice to meet you. As a leader in the product org, I thought you may be interested in learning how we help product teams like yours understand user behavior and boost digital engagement at scale across their platforms. We most often fit in as a solution for product teams to gather relevant product feedback in a quick, scalable way, identify and take action on points of friction in the user experience." I'm gonna just stop reading because it's honestly boring. But like the point being is like this is a really long email and it says a lot. So y'all are getting a sneak preview of the email that we actually edited for sales hackers. Like we do a weekly special with them, one email, two takes. And this is the email that we broke down this week. So Christina, you want to give them a sneak peek of all the things that we dislike about this?
Yeah, I mean, listen, coming from the marketing side, there's one thing I can do is appreciate this is definitely written more from a marketing type of standpoint, but it's very verbose. And that first sentence, as a leader in the product org, I literally just start to zone out a bit. And it feels really, really long, really, really heavy. And like you said, there's a lot jam-packed in this one email that could technically be an entire cadence in and of itself.
Oh yeah, they put the entire cadence in a single email.
Pretty much, yeah. And
falling out.
A lot of newer reps end up making this mistake. I did this. I'm going to be very frank. When I first transitioned from marketing to sales a few years back, I made this mistake. I felt like I needed to say exactly what I was doing, who I was, why I was reaching out, what it meant for them. And I needed to just lay it all out in that first email. But what it does is it makes it really challenging for your recipient. And it also makes it really challenging for you to figure out, what the heck do I follow up with next?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think one of the things with this, right, is we have this feeling, this need to want to fill the blank space, right? Be as comprehensive as possible so that we're informing them and how they can make the best decision for themselves. The problem is they can't get to making a decision because they can't get through the writing. We talked about this earlier, but like one of the things that drives me wild is this paragraph right here. That's one sentence, and your sentences should never go on that long. Just looking at how we view emails at Lavender, one of the main scores we look at is the complexity of the writing. And I can tell you, most emails are written at a way too high, like grade reading level, right? You might think this is building credibility, but most emails are written at or beyond a 10th grade reading level. And that's too complicated. People just can't get through it. And this email right here, this sentence, this paragraph, is a perfect example of what it means to be overcomplicating. The way that's calculated is the syllables per sentence, essentially. And so when you look at words like platforms, engagement, understand, behavior, learning, interested, product, they're common words, but strung together in that long verbose sentence, it creates this like glue for people's eyes where they just can't get through it. The average reading time on an email is about 11 seconds. So, somebody trying to get through this, they're not going to gather half the things that you want them to gather.
I'm with you. Should we share our rewrites, which are drastically shorter?
Much shorter.
Drastically. So I took the opportunity to try to make this more of a, like, this is definitely to Will, like there is no mistaking that I made this email for Will. But when I'm done sharing it, I'll also kind of tell you how you can maybe make this scalable or repeatable, right? So I changed the subject line. I thought the subject line, which we didn't touch on, Will, we both agreed it was short and sweet, which we do appreciate. I just wanted to change it up a little bit. I tend to like using the at symbol for the word at. And so I was like, all right, let's just make this product experience at Lavender, right? So Will, Scott Leese said Lavender is like gong for email. And I just had to check it out for myself, right? Like, I'm already telling you that I know you. I know what your advisors are saying about you. It sounds really interesting. Curious, how are you currently gauging product feedback, user experience, and platform adoption? So what I'm doing with this, it's not really a question for him to answer necessarily, but it's just for him to think through. Like, I'm basically saying, I'm assuming you're probably doing some level of these things. Like, how are you doing this? And then I go into like, product is helping product teams like yours raise the bar on the total product experience. With the coaching dashboard launch coming, because I know that I did my research on Lavender's website, is it worth connecting to take inventory of how you're tapping into your current product data? So I'm just trying to invite a conversation here. I know they have a feature launch coming up, or like a pretty critical product launch coming up. And this might be the time to start thinking about like, how can we make sure we get the right feedback, right? So that was my approach. But before Will gives his feedback on this, the two parts you could really switch out is my beginning, right? The Scott Lee said Lavender is like gong for email. And then you can just change out the with the coaching dashboard launch coming, right? So think about this in terms of repeating across the team. If you are managing a team or working collaboratively with a team, this now gives a framework and a place for reps to be creative by replacing those components, for their research on specific prospects. So it's kind of my methodology when I was thinking about this.
Yeah. And I think, with the coaching dashboard launch coming, it doesn't even necessarily need to be like, I know you've got some product launch coming, right? It could be like, with a product with multiple moving parts, is it worth connecting to take inventory? There's actually language I used in my own email, but I think exactly what you described, right? Is just like, if you set this up as a template, you would put like little brackets that say like, show me, me, include a little bit of research that you've done something. And then another bracket down below, just like say something specific to them around what their product is. If no option, just say, with multiple moving parts. The other thing that I really love about this, it's something that'll stand out in the inbox, is you did a great job keeping the subject line short. I love the at symbol. I think that's like a totally unique thing that nobody's really doing in their subject lines, and it doesn't follow the same pattern as like say Christina dash what's going on with product question mark, where I see that and I immediately can start to categorize it as this is about to be a sales message, right? And so instead it's like product experience at Lavender, like, okay, interesting, let me read. Okay, looking at the preview text, Scott Lee said, something about my company. Okay, well, now I'm like, well, what is this email about? You've said a name that I recognize, very much so, and the fact that they're talking about me. And so, like, those two things are like psychological triggers for me to want to open the email. And so the at bat percentage on this email is going to be like through the roof. Um, so I took a similar approach as far as brevity. Um, but slightly different approach as far as like how I would sell the product that is at hand here. So it's like product data. What I'm trying to do there is basically just talk to something that's probably an internal priority. I don't necessarily want my subject lines to stand out. It's not that it's necessarily bad. It's just I'm not trying to trigger any kind of categorization of what type of message is about to be. Instead, I just want their eyes to quickly move to the preview text, which showcase that this is an email that was written specifically for the person. So, hey, Will, as a seller, your tagline caught my eye. It's a simple idea, but requires a lot of moving parts. I imagine getting users to engage with the whole product is hard. You wouldn't be surprised to hear that the first product interaction has a huge impact on churn. Curious to hear how we're helping companies drive better product adoption. So my approach here is pretty simple in the sense that um, I'm basically just trying to outline that I understand where you're coming from. I understand your current scenario, and leading sort of as Christina tells folks all the time to lead from this like background of expertise, but doing it without trying to create this verbose complicated message, just trying to keep it short, be brief, be brilliant here as far as like, you wouldn't be surprised to know that that's going to have a big impact on something that's really important. Curious to hear more. It also gives me a ton of options to follow up.
I love this. Well, I think, what I like most about it is there's two things. One is you are demonstrating and leaning more on the subject matter expertise side of outreach. If you can't highly personalize, at least come across as if you know what you're talking about, the industry, what people in their shoes are experiencing. And that's the kind of language you use in this. But then at the same time, if you read each sentence, there's a logical flow. And as much as you're having a conversation with me as a recipient, it also feels like I can have a strong internal conversation with myself as I'm reading through, so I'm like, you imagine I'm getting users to engage with the whole product. That's hard, right? Yeah, it is hard. You wouldn't be surprised to hear that the first product interaction has a huge impact on churn. No, I'm really not surprised. That sounds about right. And then you kind of go into, are you curious to hear how we're helping companies drive better product adoption? I really like this flow. So.
Yep. Does anybody else have any comments on it?
Yeah, let's do our infamous poll. Let's pit ourselves against one another. If you really liked my rewrite, put 1. If you really liked Will's, put 2. And you can't put a tie. I'm sorry. But put that in chat. I'm always curious what people think. And it doesn't hurt either of our feelings, by the way.
Not at all. Does not.
Bye, Nick. Now we're not friends anymore, Nick. I'm kidding.
There we go.
Hey, pretty neck and neck. All right, Mark. Yeah. Brian. Yeah. These are my people. No.
I love it. Yeah, Credence, I'm on board with you on that one. That's actually, so it's interesting. What Credence said is actually the reason why I think Christina's email gets more replies is because more people are going to open Christina's email than they are mine. And so just the at-bat percentage is just a huge driving factor for how many responses you're going to get. So that's my thought on it.
I like both. I like them both, but whatever. Yeah. Thank you. No, Nick, now you want to backpedal, huh? No, I'm kidding. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad we could give you guys a sneak peek because this actually comes out in the Sales Hacker newsletter tomorrow. And so not everyone gets to see that right away, but curious, let's go into some live Q&A. Who's working through cold email, has questions? Who's got an email they want to review and rewrite? feel free to raise your hand and I will enable you to be able to ask your question live. Don't be shy. All right.
Don't jump at once.
We got Credence coming in hot. Oh, you already did it? You asked her
Yeah,
to.
I'm quick.
Wow.
Hey,
Hey,
guys.
Credence.
Good to be here with you both again. This is one of my favorite things to do on Monday. So I was very excited to see, yes, I get to get some more feedback. So
Love it.
I love the last office hours. And like I said, I've really been trying to implement what you both do and use Christina's outbound flyer framework. I run into a lot of challenges with that for my job. Like I said, I sell risk intelligence software. A lot of our people are not active on LinkedIn or have any kind of public persona at all because they might be ex-military, CIA, FBI, kind of high-level security people. So I have a tremendous amount of difficulty. I only have a few people in the off cadence right now because of that. So I just wanted to share like sort of a non-personalized email that still implements the, main tenets of your guys' emails and see how you might change it or if it's good or if it's horrible.
Christina's got this.
All right. All
Let's
right.
do it. Okay.
Where do you want me to put it in the chat?
Yeah, let's drop it in the chat, right? Well, you got a
Yeah, that
Google
works.
Doc.
And then I can bring it up on my screen.
Let's do it.
Let's see. Today's the 8th. Create a new little doc to share.
Stand by for our technical.
Yeah.
Will.
Stand by.
Awesome. Posted the doc link. Hi, George. Curious after everything. Oh, let me share my screen so that y'all see what I'm doing. Come on. Come on, Will. All right. Hi, George. Curious after everything we've been through in the last 18 months, how have you adjusted the way your organization manages critical events? Our customers in the computers space cite very similar challenges when it comes to managing critical events. Limited or no access to accurate intelligence about critical events that could disrupt operations, non-existent or inefficient methods to simultaneously communicate with all employees and stakeholders about critical events. If these challenges sound familiar, George, would you be open to me sharing a couple ideas on how we may be able to help you and your team? I'm expecting Credence. Are these bullet points?
Yes, yeah, they were. I copied it into Notepad and those didn't render.
Oh, good. I can make it look like it does.
Okay.
Cool. All right, Christina, you are the queen of this exact email format, so I want you to start.
Yeah. So first of all, Credence, thanks again for, being willing to share with everyone here listening, because I know that, some people are nervous about that. And we're not here to break people down, by the way. We will tell you what we think could be done better, but I appreciate you just being vulnerable in this moment. So
yeah, I'm greedy for your guys' assistance.
we like it. So first of all, I like the curious statement. I do like that. I think that when you go into, so just this is just initial feedback just from looking at the structure of this, it's a little bit longer than I would like to see it. And I think it just has to do with the fact that, like, I know you're a prolific writer, Credence. I've seen your writing before. And so I think it's more about you, I don't want to say dumbing things down, but try to think of, even using a word like cite, right? Like, our customers cite very similar challenges.
Okay.
The 2 bullet points are pretty heavy. What I would like to see happen is our customers in companies like theirs are experiencing, and you can basically put this into a sentence like limited access to information on critical events, inefficient methods of being able to communicate, or lack of communication with everyone involved during a critical event, and having that as like one just like smaller paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
That would be one small tweak. I would test it from there. That's
Okay.
me personally. curious after everything we've been
Yeah,
through.
this section, you'd want to cut it down to a single paragraph.
No, just the our customers and the bullet points, I'd cut that down to one single, like, impact statement.
Interesting. Because I like the bullet point, like the fact I see what she's trying to do, which is set up the binary.
I'll load it in.
You're either dealing with X or you're dealing with Y. Um, which like that to me makes a ton of sense. Um, there's a couple pieces like managing critical events. To me, like that lacks a level of like concreteness. Like, I'm not really sure what it is that like qualifies as a critical event.
Well,
I
I
guess,
used to have it in there, like explain what the critical events are, which is,
yeah,
disease outbreaks, severe weather, protests, workplace violence, but then it just goes, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." They're like, "Ugh, all right, fine, I'm
yeah,
done with this email."
yeah. Well, and I'm curious if there's like an example of like a very common critical event that you could like post um, that would make them like think through it a little differently, which is like George, um, given the past year, have you rethought how you'd approach a critical event like a like a protest in near one of your offices?
Mhm.
Uh, what's your current setup for how you would communicate to employees? And maybe like protest is like too spicy. I don't know, but in
Yeah,
my mind,
a lot of the stuff we do is really fear-based, right? Like, it's hard for me to come, from a positive angle on this when it's really like our software is designed to save lives and keep people from getting hurt. So,
right.
I really struggle with trying to make that a more neutral kind of statement while still explaining what it is and not selling with fear, which is my absolute worst. I don't want to sell that way.
Mhm, mhm.
And also, mentioning other organizations is really tricky in our group too, because we have
Yeah,
NDAs with so many of these people. So
yeah,
it's hard to be like companies like, just like you.
yeah, yeah, and I also know in, like, the cybersecurity space, like, folks get a little antsy when you start dropping names like that,
Yeah,
because 'cause they're like, "Oh, so if we work together, would you drop my name just as quickly?"
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I've had a few
Sure.
conversations in that space.
I'm
Uh,
revamping as I listen.
It's
uh,
hard. It's super challenging. Like,
yeah,
I think about how would I sell sales enablement tools? Well, I have a million ideas for that because I'm a seller, but selling
mhm,
this is a little bit out of my wheelhouse.
yeah, let's see. If these challenges sound familiar, would you be open to me sharing a couple of ideas on how we may be able to help you and your team? That's also a long sentence. Like a lot of
Mhm.
these um, sentences have some really bulky words, and I'm wondering,
Mhm.
like I always think through the question of like if you're at Thanksgiving with your family, and you're I don't know, do you have a sister, Credence?
I do, and I know where you're going with this, but all of
Yeah,
our all of our
like
family
say your
members are pretty
sister
high level
brings.
thinkers, so like
Yeah, it's
that's
like
how
say
we
your
would talk to
sister.
each other.
Sorry, there was a little
Um,
delay. I didn't mean to jump over you there.
yeah, no worries. That I think that's the problem with me. I think I need to have a thesaurus open while I'm writing these things to figure out what a more simple, because that's the number one critique that I get, Will, from Lavender. When I
Mhm.
compose these emails in Outlook and use the email assistant, it's always saying your words are too big, and I'm like, how is accessibility a big word?
Yeah,
But it is.
it's not about how common they are, right? It's about the syllable count per word.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and it's not that like, yeah, if you ask somebody to read, simultaneously communicate with employees and stakeholders, like they would understand what you're saying.
Hmm.
But those four words in the same sentence creates like
Hmm.
visual bulk. And that visual bulk is what they're actually looking at first.
Okay.
You think about the process for reading an email, you're going to read it in about 11 seconds, whether or not it takes 11 seconds to read.
Hmm.
And they're going to gather maybe a couple things from the email. When they see, particularly in the first 3 seconds, like a lot of visual weight, they might not even go through the process of reading the email.
Right.
We find that like that first 3 seconds is really where they just decide, not going to bother. You get like this delete or ignore sort of like first step in that triage. And so cutting down the bulkiness of those words is a great way to do it. All right, Christina, I'll let you go through your rewrite, and then while you're doing,
Yeah, and I may change this up a little bit. I still feel like there's got to be something in the opener that kind of speaks to why I'm reaching out, but working with what you have here, my rewrite is basically this. George, curious, after the last 18 months, how has it impacted the way your org manages critical events? We're helping other orgs in your space, and that could be brushed up a little bit more. Get full visibility into critical events intelligence, giving them the ability to better communicate with all internal stakeholders. And I might even change that to all involved, right? Do these challenges sound familiar? Open to a couple of ideas on how we may be able to help? Question. What I did here is I turned 2 questions into 1. I like to do that a lot. I use the same format sometimes on a lot of the CTAs that we use on our team and some of the teams I work with. But I basically just tried to polish a little bit of what you wrote and make it a little less heavy on the eyes. But that's what I came up with in this short amount of time, not necessarily knowing exactly what you guys do. I have kind of the high level, right, based on last session's conversation with you and this one. But yeah, that's what I would go with.
Well, it definitely meets the criteria of getting out those giant words, simplifying, what it still says what I'm trying to say without looking like a college paper.
No, and I mean that's nothing bad. You have a really strong vocabulary and that's good. But yeah, it's almost like you have to. I am also like my I did a lot of writing, like rhetoric and writing in my undergrad. And so I'm a writer too. And trust me, it was challenging for me too to like, all right, I don't have to sound like I'm super smart. I just need to sound like I know what I'm talking about and what they're experiencing. And I think if you just think of it in terms of like, what would I write a friend? Which I know Will talks about a lot too, and try to like.
and you haven't met yet.
Not yeah, one you haven't met yet, not like hey girl or anything like that, but just dumb it down a little bit. Sometimes that will help.
So I took a slightly different approach. I pulled out the binary and just went with like a quick 4 lines. George, has the past year changed how you think about critical events? Our clients are now thinking, how do we manage things like protests and viruses? I imagine this is a conversation that's come up at whatever company you're reaching out to. Want to hear how our company can help. Like I went real simple. And my thought is like gives you a lot of room in your follow-up to add context, explain a little bit more. And also decide like, you could have a follow-up that's focused on, one of these 2 binary options. I do actually appreciate like going after like that binary approach because it typically generates response in one of 2 ways. They either say A or B. So it's like I went to Christina, I said, do you want to get lunch at Chick-fil-A or McDonald's? She's like, oh, Chick-fil-A. Because obviously Chick-fil-A is better than McDonald's. But the secondary is, maybe she's like, I don't want fast food, right? But you've now gotten a response compelled. That's sort of like the main goal of writing a cold email anyways, is to get a reply. Everything gets a lot easier at that point. So I appreciate the approach. And Christina's actually written an example that we use at Lavender that has a binary, and it gets like a 10% response rate, which is awesome for an email that has 0 personalization to it.
Yeah, well, I like both of yours, and honestly, I'm gonna split test them both because we'll see which form of simpler works better.
I love it.
But yeah, I like them both too much to choose between them, and I really want to try something new with my messaging. So thank you both for these awesome rewrites.
Oh, thanks.
You
Appreciate that.
got it. Yeah, keep us posted too. Hopefully, by next session, you'll have some early data.
Yeah, I hope so.
Awesome. All
Cool, cool,
right.
cool. Thanks, Credence.
Thank you.
Okay. We've got time for more questions. Who wants to raise their hand and come off mute? Ooh,
Dude, I see one coming.
I
Oh,
got there
you
before
beat
you.
me to it.
Ha ha. Oh no, is it Atto or how do we say your first name? I just want to make sure.
Atu.
Atu. Okay. I knew
You-
I was going to say it wrong. Hi Atu, nice to meet you.
Hey, how you doing? I
Good.
just have a quick question about intros. So, like for instance, let's just say she found, and maybe in her space this probably wouldn't apply since it's like cybersecurity and things appear to be a little more buttoned up. But in the space I'm currently working in, there's always like articles coming out about like, so I'm selling a technology that automates income verification and identity verification for any type of program, so like SNAP, Medicaid, CHIP, things like that. And there's always articles like coming out about like fraud and how like money's always going down the drain pretty much. And I've always wondered how to actually like integrate this in the email like in a succinct way. Like I don't know if it's always better to like hyperlink it, just say like I'm reaching out because of XYZ. Because like hyperlinking can be good because like oh like it shows that like it's personalized, but also like it can just make it more busy. So I'm always kind of playing with that like in my mind, and I just wanted to know if you guys had any best practices.
Hmm.
uh, yeah.
A lot of questions in one right there, but I figured I'd
No,
go to the
no.
experts and see what you guys have to say.
It's
Yeah.
you want to go first, Will?
Yeah, because like part of it's like there's a lot of things I'm curious about and how you're reaching out. So it's like the article is the reason you're reaching out, or the article is like part of a touch point. Like, are you putting that in the first touch, or are you using it as like follow up?
No, I'm putting it in the front. Well, not always, because for instance, like sometimes, like there. So maybe I just like I can drop an example like in a chat.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things too on my mind.
Where is the chat? Is it in settings about?
It should be down. There should be a chat button at the bottom of your Zoom screen next to participants.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
I
oh, there
don't.
you go. That's weird. All right, I'll go to
While you're copying and pasting that, do you want me to? I can share the binary example that Christina wrote for us.
Yeah, I was
That's
gonna
getting
say.
10% response rate because I think it'd be a good learning example for folks. That'll buy me some time to copy and paste it into the doc as well.
Come on, why does this not allow me to paste? There you go. And of course, it didn't paste the article because it's in I think chat. 1 second,
That's
but
okay.
I'll throw.
You can just tell
That's
us. You can just tell us
yeah.
which parts
Yeah,
you
so
like.
like I came across this article is hyperlinked and it's just an article about like West Virginia like UI unemployment insurance fraud pretty much. It's a
Okay.
short one.
I see what you're doing there. So you're using that as a basis, like a third party neutral basis to just reach out, right?
Yeah, pretty much because again
Yeah.
we have some lobby firms that we work with who have relationships with some states, but we don't have relationships with like every single state. So sometimes they're like, huh, like wow, like there's 30 million in fraud that came out, in Florida. Like it'd be great for me to speak to the person who heads up like, the UI integrity program or something like that. So it's any way I can get in touch with a person who actually administers the program is like going to be great for us.
Let me ask a question real fast just to clarify more. So are these articles that you're curating off of like, like for example, like Forbes, things like that, versus like you're seeing this posted on LinkedIn and these folks are potentially engaging with it? Like how are you surfacing this content, I guess?
Oh no, it's typically like local, so like local
Okay.
news about like West Virginia or Florida.
Okay.
It's typically not like Forbes because they don't cover things like they'll cover like the big stories, but like typically pretty specific.
Okay. All right, got it.
I have a feeling where you're going with this, Christina, which is that's something along the lines of like, did you see this article in?
Yeah, you know where I'm gonna go with it because it's one of my go-to
Yeah.
follow-ups. I don't usually use it to like as a preface to reach out. But I do think this could be a really, really solid second touch strategy. And I do have a way that I use that, and I've been using that same kind of approach for the last a couple years, and it works well across multiple industries. So I can always
Love it.
share what that format looks like, but yeah, as far as the first touch goes. What are you thinking, Will?
So I'm thinking along the lines of like, hi Scott, are you following along? Are you? I almost like want to reach out of like, have you been following this story?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And I'm just gonna throw one more thing in there. Sorry about this. I should have said this earlier. Sometimes these people are actually quoted in the article itself. So sometimes like so for
Ah,
instance, like Scott in this particular instance, like Scott was actually quoted by saying like, yeah, we're working to do our best to fix like unemployment fraud, like XYZ. So sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. But either way, like I kind of like your intro, Will, where you were going.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think with that example, I think you could say, Scott, saw your quote in blank article, right? Because like if they're quoted, you immediately want to be like, saw your quote, because that immediately showcases to them that
I
you've
read.
done your research and you've at least pulled them up, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen over and over again that saw your blank or saw you dot dot dot, that framework for starting an email just works. Um,
Sweet.
noticed your quote, saw your quote, saw your recent add-on with Blank's article. Um, great to hear that you're on this, but are you looking for something that could help you do it better? We're working with Louisiana and Alabama to do the following.
Got it. Yeah, I like Sawyer quote because it's so short. Because sometimes, like, again, we're still a pretty new organization, so we tend to get like a little lengthy on our copy. I'm like, guys, like, no one's gonna effing read this. Like, people don't have
No, they're
time. But
not.
yeah, no, like I've like even the first intro like used to be like two sentences, and I cut it down to like, okay, not I saw or like I came across, just came across. But Sawyer quote is like that's perfect.
Yeah. Or yeah, I think saw your quote is a good way to start it. Yeah, I think there's the classic you want to like almost congratulate them. I actually find that to be a little like cheesy and overplayed because like especially with like fundraising emails, you see it all the time. It's like saw your recent funding round, congrats. Instead, like I would focus as soon as you say saw your quote, like don't congratulate them on being quoted. I would go straight into saw your quote in blank's article. Love that you're thinking about um,
Like how to prevent
um,
UI fraud or just what? Yeah, love everything about whatever. Like I could. That's easy to make up. Yeah.
love you thinking about employment fraud. We're helping Alabama Workforce Commission. It's a long, it's a big chunk of words there.
Yeah, and honestly, maybe I could just say one state because like I could just say like we're helping Louisiana's uh like unemployment office to do XYZ or like Louisiana currently using our technology to automate income verification and identity verification.
hmm um, yeah, this is interesting. Like, because one of the things that I see over and over again is like those big words stacked on top of each other, getting in the
Yeah.
way of them actually reading the message. Um, and so, like, one of the things that I might do is actually, instead of saying technology, I'd say tech, just to like start hacking away at that syllable count.
Hmm.
Um, but love that you're already thinking about employment fraud. Have you put tech in place to mitigate some of this? They're helping Alabama, do other states identify fraud before it happens. Want to hear more. Something like that. I love how short your note is. I'm just trying to like cut some of the employed workforce.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're seeing my thinking face because I've already written a first touch structure and I'm thinking of this as a follow-up touch for those where maybe they're not quoted directly. And it would be more of a value add follow-up is what I would call it. Where you're kind of sharing it, like, hey, do you follow, the Workforce Commission news for Alabama? They recently put out this article about income and identity, verification news. I'm just kind of throwing this out there.
Yeah.
Thought I'd share it with you in case it's an interesting read to add to your list. It's usually how I'll structure something like this. And then I'll kind of go back to like, hey, are you open? Did you see my last email? Are you open to like a quick chat? How did my last email land? Something. I'm just kind of throwing this out there because I'm losing steam, but
yeah, I actually like that though. Man, it's like such a subtle like touch to the last note. It's like,
yeah, you're kind of like giving, and then let's go back to the point at hand. Like this is a reply in thread. So now you can like scroll up and see, or scroll down and see the first message I sent you. But now like, hey, I want to share something with you. And like, hey, how'd that last email land with you? Like, are you open to exploring this? Right. So I like to use that anytime I'm using third-party content. And I stress that most people should use third-party, neutral ground, reputable content, whether it's local or, I said Forbes or whatever, as like a basis to follow up versus company content, because people trust those sources more than they're going to trust your company. So
yeah.
I like what you're doing here. I like that you can use this for an initial follow-up. But I think it could be used as a really powerful, like standalone follow-up too, for those people that are in your pipeline.
Yeah, you could basically break it into 2 emails. I love that follow-up that you have. The other thing I really like that you did here was this first paragraph. Saw an article you were quoted in recently. You don't tell them where you found it. And it like creates this like mystery. So when they see that email in their inbox, they're immediately gonna be like, all right, what article was I quoted in? Yeah, maybe it was this one, but maybe I'm being talked about somewhere else.
Yeah, and you can say the name of the publication too, if you really wanted to, but there's no need to hyperlink to it because guess what? It's theirs and they've already been quoted in it. So it's
exactly.
You don't have to.
Yeah. That said, if they're not quoted in it, I would use it. Say they're not quoted in this example. Say Scott's not quoted in it. I might do a more general first touch around like, hey, are you experiencing, what steps are you putting into place to deal with employment fraud? We're finding that, tons of workforce commission leaders like yourself are looking to tech to mitigate the problem. Have you, interested in seeing what kind of solutions we're putting in place for them? And use that as like a general first touch. And then the second touch, I'd follow up with this.
Yeah.
Got it. And this is like last question.
Yeah.
So do you think because again we're mentioning the quote at some point in the email that you would like have that be maybe the focus of the subject line, or would you, and then maybe I'm getting too much into like, subject lines totally different from body copy. But would you
Yeah.
reference the actual like maybe news article? Like let's just say that the article came out like 12 hours ago on Sunday, and then Monday rolls around. Like, would it be smart for me to mention like the article in the subject line, or do you think you should keep it more focused on like fraud or whatever I'm selling?
Great question.
I personally follow the format when I'm using someone's content, whether it's something they posted on LinkedIn or something they were quoted in, I'll usually use their first name in the subject line. So it would be Scott about your article, or Scott about your recent quote, whatever. I would try to still keep it somewhat short, but enough to generate curiosity because you're calling them out by their first name and you're saying this is about something I saw you in, right?
Yeah.
I
And
like
depending on how you start the email, you might want to leave more room for like the preview text, in which case leave out, Christina saw your article. Just
Yeah,
be like your recent article, saw your article.
yeah, that works too.
Um, but say they're not quoted, maybe just focus on um, and maybe say like employment fraud um, process, something like that. It kind of states like what you're trying to understand, but also might feel like it's something that they're talking about internally.
got it. Okay.
Um,
Yeah, that idea, because people will triage that, to still Will's narrative. Like if it seems like it might be something that's even an internal type of subject line, not internal like, hey, can you meet at 2 p.m. as a subject line, but when it's something that's a problem that that they're facing, that can be pretty powerful.
yeah. And by the way, I'm going to put this in the office hours thing so that people can see
Oh
it.
snap.
It's a little binary.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hopefully that was helpful, Atu.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right.
yeah.
I
So before we get to the next question, I just thought it'd be cool to go through this email that you wrote because I know Credence had to bounce, but I thought this would be a helpful example of
Yeah.
see what Credence is trying to do here with this binary. We actually have one that Christina, you wrote for us, and it's working really well. And so I wanted to bring it up and maybe Christina bring some light to the thinking behind it.
Yeah, so this is a structure and framework that I like to use. You'll hear me if you join these at all very often. Like I tend to talk about repeatable frameworks. The framework to this is kind of that subject matter expertise. I want to tell you that I know what people are experiencing that are in your shoes because I'm having these conversations every day. And I want to put it in terms that gets them to kind of nod their head like, okay, this person might actually know what they're talking about because they're talking to people like me. So the structure that I put together for lavender and specifically, it reads like this. And obviously you can change out the title, things like that, depending on who you're reaching out to. But it says in chatting with other SDR leaders, 2 key problems they're experiencing are: one, enabling team to write better emails faster. Faster is huge in this situation. 2, getting visibility into key metrics for coaching opportunities. Sometimes we don't know what people are sending, right? Because we can't see it. We're helping sales teams at Brex and Reload spend less time personalizing emails and increase positive replies with our inbox email assistant. Is this something you struggle with too? Open to a quick chat. It's super simple. There is zero personalization involved in this. But again, this is a really good fallback when you're reaching out to personas that don't really have anything to personalize on. You're grasping at straws and it can be repeatable. So yeah, I think we're seeing like a 10% plus reply rate on this. And we've actually booked and converted some opportunities on this one too.
Yep, it works. That binary option, people feel the need to fill the void.
So steal it. Feel
Uh,
free to steal it. I won't say steal it because I'm telling you, like, take it. Feel
yeah,
free to take it and structure it for yourself. But this does
absolutely.
work. Yeah.
Yep. And the other thing that I love about this, Christina, is this. I talk about this a bit more now. Is this notion of like academic versus sales English being two very different things. Recognizing that a sales leader is going to their inbox just like an IT leader or anyone else, and they're not actually reading for comprehension. So one of the things that stands out in bullet point number 1, enabling team to write better emails faster. Like if you were looking at that from like a grammatical sense, like you might be like, that's reading kind of weird. But when you scan it and you're like, team emails faster, got it, good, keep going. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny. There's like several examples I can point to where like the sales English is not necessarily grammatical English, and it works. Um, I've done that again and again, and
Yeah.
continue to see that performing. So when in doubt, just focus on making the best visual experience for somebody to quickly grasp information.
Yes. I think we can do one more question if someone has a
Yeah, for sure.
question. and the remaining people who have like stuck with us through all of this. Anyone out there have anything they want to ask or share? You want to share a success? Like you got an email that's working really hot for you, or a follow-up tactic that's working really hot for you? I'm always down to like hear what other people are doing. I think people are like, it's Monday, I'm tired. Oh, here we go. Hey, Patty, what do you think about adding a meeting link? Oh, Patty. All right. Oh, so it's in your, let me clarify with you. Is it in your signature block, like at the bottom? What does that look like? Where do you have it? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I will tell you, I'm not a big fan of like sharing a Calendly link or anything like that in the body of your text. I mean, if it happens to be a part of your signature block, so be it. I think those really come into play when someone has expressed interest in booking time. And it's really as a mechanism to ease the back and forth of scheduling a time. And the way I use that is I'll usually say, hey, Will, great, thanks for getting back to me. Do you have some time Tuesday at 1 p.m. or Thursday at 12 p.m.? Alternatively, you can select a day and time that works best for you here, and I'll link to my calendar. That's the way that I like to use it. But again, that's after they've replied, after they've expressed interest.
I have a very similar format, which is I wait until post response, and yeah, at that point in time, and it's the right time to book the meeting. I give them what I sort of dubbed like a triple option of I ask them for their calendar link, I offer up mine if it's easier, and I also suggest some times. So very similar format to yours, Christina. Just like, hey, just Tuesday after 4:30 Eastern work. Feel free to send me your calendar or use mine if it's easier. Every single time they either click on my calendar link and pick a time, or they respond back with yes, that time works. But even now and then, like somebody will send me the calendar link. I'm like, oh, that's lovely. But giving them that option makes it definitely just work a little bit better. The other thing to consider is like the signature, having that link there. Yeah, it probably doesn't hurt you overall, but just like you visually when they first see the email, say you've got like this quick little email, and then there's this massive like book a time with me button at the bottom of your email. It might come across as though like, oh, this is yet another sales email that I'm getting, even though it's not in like the body of the email.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And then one other point I'll make too is like if you are including any other hyperlinks within the body of your email, and then you also have that down kind of looming at the bottom, there is a slight chance that that could impact deliverability overall by having just too many hyperlinks going on. It's a difference between having identifiable information and like a hyperlink to your website in your signature, because that helps to identify who you are. Oh yeah, that happens too. We get people who tell us what we have to do and we just follow it, right? Yeah, I mean, you can tell her. I think there's a constructive way to do it. I would be really surprised if anyone's actually just like, oh, cool, Will email me. Oh, his calendar link's right here. I'm just gonna book time. More often than not, that's not gonna happen unless you are like running like if you're an inbound sales rep or something where maybe people are a little warmer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Inbound is the actual great like differentiation there. Just like sometimes they already like display that they're interested in like setting up a demo, or they've like filled out a form that they'd like to move forward with a trial. In which case, like, okay, yeah,
here's the link.
makes a ton of sense. The other thing to think about when you're looking at like calendar links is there's a bit of a weird power dynamic there. And I always refer to this like as the push versus pull. Yeah, I always want people pulling for time, not me pushing my time. And so like one of the things, like say your boss is making you do it, fine, leave it up there, whatever. But block off stretches of time to make your time seem more valuable and less available. Yeah, and you could set that up as just like you're managing your time well, and time block for things like I'm doing my prospecting at these hours, I'm doing the following X, Y, and Z at these hours. I'm following up at these hours, cold call block, you name it. But what that'll do is make it seem like you're, not totally available. And that actually encourages them to want to find time. That sort of scarcity dynamic. And as a byproduct, you'll manage your time better, which is always good too.
I'm a big fan of calendar blocking. Awesome. All right. Any other last minute questions? We got 2 minutes. We can also wrap a little early. It's not a big deal, but oh, you're so welcome. I really hope this has been helpful. Yeah, listen, we don't expect everyone to have a question every week, but feel free to continue to join in. We are starting to record these now, which means this content will be available in other formats, which is great. You can refer back to it. We also openly share our Google Doc when we're doing these rewrites so that people can actually absorb and reuse and repurpose.
Yep.
But yeah, we will be back, I think,
2 weeks.
maybe in 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks on Monday at 1 p.m. So look out for that information. Yeah. Look out for that information. Yeah. Bring a potluck. Okay. Bring some potluck dishes. We'll celebrate together a little early.
Great.
All right. Thanks everyone.
Yeah. Thank you all.